Yeah, so I love the Krays. I've watched the films, I've read the books, I've watched the documentaries ever since, God, I was about 7 or 8. I just absolutely thought they were brilliant, and I wanted to be just like them at one point when I was a little kid. So finding out stuff about them that I really didn't want to know, so I'm going to tell you about it. So this is the Krays and the Pervert here. Their lives and empire was based on violence, racketeering and political corruption, thanks to a Labour MP and a pervert lord. In Britain in 1964, the Defence Minister John Profumo had a trial that threatened to bring down the government after it emerged he had an affair with a call girl, Christine Keeler. Conservatives were low in the polls and desperately needed to avoid another sex scandal at all cost. But there was another Tory politician doing even worse. Lord Robert Boothby. He was well loved in the late 50s and 60s. He became a politician just aged 24, and he was close to Winston Churchill. He was ambitious, but during Parliament questions, he failed to declare a financial interest, and he was banished to the backbenches in Parliament. This didn't affect his career or popularity. However, he was living a double life. As well as enjoying the company of young men, he was also having an affair with Dorothy Macmillan, the wife of Prime Minister Harold Macmillan. He even had the audacity to ask Harold for a peerage, which he got. The affair was common knowledge amongst Parliament and Fleet Street. Now, back in the day, all the media for England was at Fleet Street. Apparently she acted as his beard, which is like his kind of cover, because in the 60s homosexuality was against the law in Britain. There was a journalist called Michael Thornton, and he discovered that Lord Boothby was bisexual and also had strong ties to the London underworld, which was ruled by gangsters Ronnie and Reggie Kray. Now, Michael Thornton was invited round to Boothby's house. I think it was a flat at the time, and Thornton said that a blonde, slim young man emerged from the bedroom. His name was Leslie Holt. He was told that he was a burglar by demand. What Boothby would do is he'd say to Leslie Holt, "Here's the address of someone who had pissed Boothby off," and when these people were away on holiday or whatever, Leslie Holt would go and burgle the house. And obviously as well, he was sleeping with Boothby. Leslie seemed to be someone who earned his money from well-connected, rich old men. Leslie had met Lord Boothby at a boxing fight apparently, and Boothby introduced him to a higher level of living. You know, he wined and dined him and bought him a car, and he was his boyfriend. When Michael Thornton was at Boothby's flat one time, Holt was there, and Holt said to Boothby, "Should I go and get the governor now?" And Boothby said yeah. So half an hour later, a heavily set man walked in. Michael Thornton described his eyes as black, like a killer shark, dead. He had a disturbing energy. This was Ronnie Kray. Boothby called him Ron, and Ronnie called Boothby Bob. They embraced, and it was clear that they knew each other and were close friends. In 1963, Boothby was hanging out with Ronnie, but Ronnie was making friends in high places throughout Parliament. This is a pattern that Al Capone followed, to dominate and corrupt those in power. Now, Ronnie wrote in his autobiography that he loved American gangsters and the mafia. He was obsessed with the way that they had total power and control over the police and the American politicians. So the Krays opened a club called the Regal, and it weren't long before they started getting threatened with protection money. This didn't end well because Ronnie and Reggie loved violence, and Ronnie was a psychopathic paranoid schizophrenic, according to some psychiatrists. Ronnie was very unpredictable, and his violent outbursts knew no bounds. In 1961, the Conservative government in Britain passed a law to legalise casinos. The Krays took total advantage of this, and they opened a Mayfair club called Esmeralda's Barn. There was 3 floors which offered something to everyone. The ground floor was a lesbian club, the middle floor was a rock club, and the top floor was the casino. This attracted celebrities, politicians, lords and ladies, and the Krays were rubbing shoulders with high society. Now they needed to exploit them for their own gain. There was a man called Lord Effingham, and he was put on the board of the bar. He was used by the Krays to introduce the who's who in power. His presence attracted many openly gay men. This encouraged Ronnie to go more public with being gay. Many of the high clientele had an appetite for young working class men, which Ronnie supplied them with from the East End then boys. This allowed Ronnie to corrupt his first politicians. The Krays had opened an East End bar called the Kentucky Club, which featured in the film Sparrows Can't Sing, and this is where the launch party was. He was meeting the actors and directors, but they weren't of any interest to him. They didn't have any power. He was, however, introduced to Labour MP Tom Dryburgh. He was a respected journalist, but in his private life, he liked to have risky sex with men in toilets and public places. He loved the thrill of possibly getting caught. He had been arrested many times, but he was never charged due to his political influence. His close friends consisted of a press baron called Lord Beaverbrook. He had a collection of all the offences that Dryburgh had committed and all the fines that Beaverbrook had waived. Dryburgh met a gay member of the Krays gang, Mad Teddy Smith. He was a working class lad with a criminal record, and this turned Dryburgh on to no end. They started an affair. Ronnie had gone to Dryburgh to ask for help regarding a prison transfer on compassionate grounds. Ronnie wanted to be connected to both parts of the political establishment for ultimate control. In 1963, Ronnie Kray moved into Cedric Court, and his neighbour was Leslie Holt. They became lovers and soon found out he shared Holt with Lord Boothby. Ronnie started to hold sex shows at his flat. He would tailor them specifically for whoever was the guest. He did this for blackmail material. Teddy Smith and Leslie Holt would invite Dryburgh and Boothby to these shows. Dryburgh was known for wanting to go down on everyone. Holt was involved in scat sex with Boothby. Now, if you don't know what scat sex is, Google it. It's not nice, put it that way. The word young boys, young men keeps coming up, and in 1963, from what I can work out of from Holt's death, in 1963 Holt would have been 26, so it's not like he was a 17-year-old boy or nothing. So Cray and Boothby dined together in the House of Lords, and Boothby invited Ronnie to his flat. A regular guest was journalist Michael Thornton, like I've already said. One night in the flat, there was a boy who had a bruised face and a cut lip. This is while Michael Thornton's there. Ronnie told him to be nice to Boothby, and the boy walked up to him and kissed him on the mouth. The four went on to Esmeralda's barn. Michael met another of Ronnie's boys at the club, who apparently said shocking things about him. He talked about there was a rape against a well-known boxer. Ronnie had apparently raped a well-known actor at gunpoint. Now, these men were, they weren't gay. They were completely forced. Ronnie made it clear he had a sexual interest in Michael and was trying to persuade him to go home with him. So Michael told him to fuck off. So Ronnie, being Ronnie, you don't tell Ronnie Krays to fuck off and get away with it. Michael was dragged into a corridor and a gun was pulled on him. Reggie suddenly appeared and told Ronnie to leave the kid alone. He's not interested, and he's the fucking press. Reggie told Michael to get lost and go. So Ronnie provided Boothby with lower working class kids, whilst Boothby supplied Ronnie with West End class boys, which Michael was. So Michael Thornton, being a journalist, he tried to write about it, but the Sunday Express was aligned with the Tory party, and the editor refused to write about it. He was told there were certain stories you never write about. It was only a matter of time before the story got out. 1964 was election year, and crime was big on the agenda. The Krays activities was attracting the media and police to their operation. The Sunday Mirror was about to run a story on the Krays and their brother Charlie. Crime correspondent Norman Lucas received a tip that the Krays were having a relationship with Lord Boothby. The editor did do a front page story, but he never named names. They were simply referred to as Pia and the gangster. But everyone knew that the Pia and the gangster was Boothby and Ronnie. The whips, which are in Parliament, went to Boothby and said, "Listen, is this true?" But Boothby said, no, I've got no knowledge of it, it's not me. So an anonymous person sent a picture of Lord Boothby, Ronnie Kray and Leslie Holt. The Tory whips knew that Boothby had lied to them, and they were fuming, and the government was in crisis 3 months before the election. Dryburgh was also being talked about at this point, but it was now Labour who had to close ranks and silence anyone for speaking out. There was an inter-party conspiracy to save Parliament from public ruin. A man called Arnold Goodman from Labour offered his services to Boothby. He was Harold Wilson's Mr. Fix-It, and Boothby wrote to the Times with an excuse, the Times was a newspaper, with an excuse that nobody believed. The Daily Mirror hid all the evidence, and they issued an apology on the front page. Cecil King bottled out. The editor of the Daily Mail was sacked, and he was made the scapegoat. Boothby was awarded £40,000 in damages, and Harold Wilson went on to win the election with Labour. That cover-up by Labour and the Conservatives had consequences. Other papers dropped that subject for a long time. The police commissioner, Joe Simpson of Scotland Yard, gave a statement that there had never been an investigation into the Krays. So the police knew that the Krays were protected by the powers that be. Until the owner of the Hardaway Club in Soho made a complaint that the Krays and Teddy Smith had gone into his bar, smashed up his premises and threatened him. The 3 men were arrested. They were refused bail. Ronnie contacted Bob for help. He stood in the House of Lords, actually stood up in the House of Lords and demanded that the Krays get released on bail. He was shouted down for it. Lord Boothby told Michael Thornton that he was acting under duress and that he was being blackmailed by Ronnie. Leslie Holt said a while later that the Krays had photos of him naked at sex parties, indulging in disgusting sex acts. The Krays and Teddy Smith were put on trial, but the Krays were acquitted of all charges. And they went on to a TV show, were interviewed and filmed, and Ronnie turned round and said that Reggie said that all he wanted is to settle down and get married, and Ronnie said that he wanted to go abroad for a bit and then to be left alone. By now the Krays were considered celebrities. Reggie did get married to Frances, and Tom Dryberg was at the wedding. The Krays felt more untouchable than ever. The violence escalated, the damage they had caused. They knew that they were above the law. Until March 1966. Now, up until this point, the Krays had not murdered anyone. Well, there weren't any proof anyway. But in 1966, this was about to change. George Cornell was a rival gangster who called Ronnie a fat puff. So Ronnie turned round and shot him in the head in a pub. Ronnie's paranoia was getting worse. On the 29th of October 1967, Jack the Hat McVitie was contracted to kill someone, but he refused to do it. The Krays The Krays got him to this party that it weren't a party. And when he walked in, the Krays stabbed him over 50 times. They had become careless. And there was a new commissioner of Scotland Yard by now. The twins were arrested and charged with murder. They were sentenced to life in prison but for the politicians involved, their lives carried on as normal. In 1969, there was a man researching for the book on the Krays who got on quite well with the Krays' mum, Violet. So Ronnie said to Violet, give him this box. So, the researcher opened the box and it contained loads of photos which proved that Boothby was a liar when he said he'd only met him 3 times. Now, there was photos out at restaurants with Ronnie and young boys. There was also letters from Boothby to Ronnie dated 1963. Boothby has said they had never met until 1964. Why lie about that? The book got rejected. It was also meant to be serialised in a newspaper, and that was stopped as well. The chairman of the Observer was Arnold Goodman. Pearson, the researcher, he said the cover-up extended to burglary. Pearson's house was broken into and loads of the evidence for the book was taken. Also, Pearson's agent's home was turned over and the file on Lord Boothby was taken. Arnold Goodman became Lord Goodman. He was rewarded for keeping the info out of the media. Dryburgh was also given a peerage. Boothby was in the House of Lords until his death in 1986. When all three were dead, John Pearson was finally allowed to print his story, but all links still haven't been disclosed. Important people in the establishment had been lobbying the police on behalf of the Krays, which a Freedom of Information request revealed. Important names have been redacted because the names of the people are still alive, so they're still being protected more than 40 years later. Leslie Holt died in 1979, aged 42. Now listen to this. After a Harley Street, which is dodgy as fuck anyway, after a Harley Street doctor, Dr. Gordon Kells, administered a lethal dose of anaesthetic while removing a verruca from the big toe, the doctor was cleared of all charges at the Old Bailey 2 years later. Ronnie Kray died 17th of March 1995. Charlie Kray died 4th of April 2000. Reggie Kray was the last one of them to die. I can't remember when Violet died. I think she died while they were in prison, because I think they let them out to go to the mum's funeral. So, what do you think of that? I mean, it happens all the time, all over the world. It's not new to corrupt politicians and blackmail them. I mean, in the UK, we've had the King Cora boys' home scandal, which was, I think, MI5. So yeah, let me know what you think, and I will see you in my next one. Ta-da.